Welcome back to the stuff about money they didn't teach you in school. I am your co-host, Erik Garcia,
And
joined by
Xavier Angel, certified financial planner. How you doing, Erik?
Man, I am doing good. I love this time in New Orleans. Beautiful spring weather.
Allergies as well. I hear your allergies in your clearing your throat.
The allergies are real.
Yes.
This time of year.
Yes.
All right. Let's hop into this. So a little while ago, we talked about myths about building wealth, and we wanted to do the other side of that. We're talking about myths of building wealth. We wanted to talk about how to actually build wealth. Right. We talk about the ingredients to wealth. Before we get into the ingredients of wealth, we want to talk about some behaviors that actually are obstacles, say even more strongly, they're wealth killers or wealth destroyers. So I want to talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. Because how you just said that is powerful. Wealth destroyer, wealth killer.
Wealth destroyer. Yeah. If you're around enough people who you've actually seen build wealth, and we have, you start to notice a pattern. You start to notice not just a pattern on building it, but you also notice how quickly some people can lose it, how quickly that wealth can be lost, right? So again, before we talk about those ingredients to wealth, I want to understand a little bit more how wealth can get destroyed. And contrary to what people think, we find ourselves in a volatile market. So contrary to what people think, most wealth isn't necessarily destroyed by the stock market. That's what people think. Like, oh, the market drops, my wealth has evaporated. On the contrary, most wealth is destroyed, and the biggest obstacle to building wealth is behavior. So I want to lean in a little bit in this idea of behavior. I am holding up a book right here. It's called Misbehaving. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. This was written by Richard Thaler. Richard Thaler is kind of the father of this entire field of study around financial behavior. So a lot of people have heard the term behavioral finance. He won a Nobel Prize in economics. And really, he spent his career studying how people make financial decisions. And he made some really simple observations that it's simple, but it seems it's not very groundbreaking. But this one observation that he made was that people do not always act rationally or in their best decisions interests when it comes to money. And he also said one of the problems is most of the economic models that we use assumes that people make optimal decisions. And the reality is that they don't. So if we know that people don't act perfectly rational, then it shouldn't surprise us that most financial mistakes that people are going to make, it's not caused by a lack of financial literacy. It's not caused by a lack of financial knowledge. It's caused by their behavior. And when you look at Thaler's work, the most financial mistakes fall into some predictable patterns, and they seem to show up again and again and again in life. So we want to talk about 3 bad behaviors that destroy wealth.
Before we jump into that real quick, Erik, give the name of that book again.
It's called Misbehaving.
Misbehaving by
Richard Thaler, Thaler.
Got it.
The Making of Behavioral Economics. So some people may have heard of Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman is another psychologist. He wrote a lot of really good stuff in a lot of different spaces. He wrote some stuff on money. Daniel Kahneman built off of some of Richard Thaler's work as well. But it's not an easy read, but it's a good read. So you ready to jump into this?
I am ready. You ready to get philosophical here today?
I don't know if we're going to be philosophical. Hopefully that this is helpful.
No, it is. It definitely is. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about those the 3 bad behaviors that kill or destroy building wealth.
Yeah, first one.
Emotional decision making.
Oh, you're going to lead us off. Emotional decision making. That's right. Yeah. In the context of the stock market, you think of like panic selling. And this isn't all about behaviors with investing. This is just general financial behaviors. But
so let's talk a little bit first about, before you move on, panic selling, because people are going to sit there and think about what is that, and in the context of investment, and I'll go there first. When we look at that, we're talking about the markets are down, people panic, and the first thing they're doing is looking to sell those investments.
Yeah, and I would say what tends to happen, and the behavior that really, I think, destroys wealth when it comes to the stock market is, there's a big drop in the market. We're living through that right now. A lot of volatility, afraid of what's going to happen next, rightfully so. I'm not dismissing anyone's concern or fear. So the solution is to go to cash. I had an example. I had a client conversation the other day. They emailed me. They wanted to go to cash in their account. And ironically enough, this same client, they asked me my thoughts about it. And I said, well, last year when you wanted to go to cash, we did. You persisted. We went to cash. And they were one of my only portfolios that were negative on the year last year. Everything else was positive to a great degree. But they were, because what happened was they rode the market down. They got scared of what was happening. Again, I don't want to dismiss their fear, but they panic sold, got out. And that's a behavior. That's an investment behavior problem. On the flip side of panic selling is performance chasing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin hits $120,000. I'm going to buy Bitcoin. Next thing you know, it's trading at 68,000. Right? People chasing and taking big bets.
Right. So we get to that high point, and I'm calling you and saying, Erik, I want to buy.
Yeah.
You go ahead and purchase it, and it's down.
Yeah. This is not an investment recommendation or a signal to sell. But in a recent conversation with Phil Blancato, the chief markets officer at Osaic, the firm that we represent, I asked him point blank, what's the most overrated asset class right now? And he said gold. A lot of people want to buy gold right now, but the question is, has it run up? Are we chasing performance? Yeah. And all tied to performance chasing and panic selling. It's just humans tend to overreact to short-term volatility.
Right. Or we're hearing, people are telling us about, I've got this particular stock and I've had it for the last 5 years and here's where it is. Right. Mm-hmm. And now because I'm hearing those great returns, I'm chasing it. I'm chasing that performance.
Yeah, well, it's chasing the performance or panic selling, right? It's this reaction to volatility, particularly on the fear side. On the panic selling side, Richard Thaler calls this loss aversion. Like, you've probably heard that before. I've got an aversion to losing money. Who doesn't? I don't like losing money. I haven't talked to anyone who likes to lose money. But an understanding of the stock market is that, hey, it's going to go up and it's going to go down. But here's what Richard Thaler found, that losses loom larger than gains. So here's what it means. For someone to lose $10,000, it hurts a lot more than gaining $10,000 feels good. Mm-hmm. Same amount of money, but I feel the loss of pain. And what he found, twice as much as the good feeling of gain, even if it's in the same amount in either direction. So, again, he goes on to say that people don't make decisions to maximize outcomes. They make decisions typically to avoid pain. That's what panic selling is, right? We sell at the worst possible time. And quite frankly, we buy sometimes at the worst possible time. Bad, emotional decision, investment decision.
So if I'm listening to you and hearing you correctly, then what I'm gathering out of this is we're not losing money because the markets go down. We're losing our money because we're making bad decisions and we're panicking.
No, we're reacting.
Reacted to, correct.
Right. Market's going to go up and down. We know that. Objectively, we know that. In any given year, we can expect the market to drop peak to trough 10%. Mm-hmm. It's a given. That means if you have $1 million invested, there's a chance that your $1 million is worth $900,000 at some point in the year. However, the majority of the years, the market ends positively. Mm-hmm. And that's an objective truth that we know about the market. And it doesn't feel good, right? We can't control how we feel. However, we destroy our wealth building potential because we don't control how we react to those events. Right. All right. Behavior 2.
Lifestyle creep.
Yeah, moving away from the market. Lifestyle creep. What is lifestyle creep, Xavier?
And I hear this one often. Our income increases. We get that raise. We get a new job. We're making more money, and now our lifestyle is going to increase as well. Right? Just because my income increases doesn't mean I need to go out and buy a new car or a bigger house or take more trips. That's lifestyle creep. Spending rises, and income rises, and we spend more.
Yeah, our spending doesn't necessarily rise, and our spending tends to increase at a faster rate than our income does. And sometimes it's natural, right? Like we find ourselves in a high inflationary period. It's hard, like lifestyle. It's not even our lifestyle creeping. It's just more expensive to maintain our lifestyle. But you compound lifestyle creep. It's time for me to get a car. I'm going to buy a little bit more of an expensive car than I did last time. Right. I'm going to buy more expensive clothes this time. I deserve it. I just got a pay raise. But what the problem is, that margin never gets created. That space between what we make and what we spend, it never increases.
Right. And when you lose, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, when we lose that margin, it doesn't allow us to do the other things that we need to do in order to build wealth.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's what's interesting too, that Richard Thaler found in his book. He talks about this idea of mental accounting. And the idea is that we treat money differently depending on where it comes from. So we treat bonus money differently than we do salary. Investment gains, sometimes we treat that like as house money. It's extra money that we may spend it differently than, or less prudently, less frugally. So we justify spending in ways that don't actually build wealth. And that's kind of one of the reasons. And here's what tends to happen, right? How many people do you know you get bonus? You come into like a windfall, maybe. You've kind of heard this on the extreme side with lottery winners or professional athletes. That's new money, found money. They spend it differently than if they earned it themselves. And sometimes what tends to happen is we used one-time source of money, a bonus, for example, because it might not be every year, to buy something that could increase our expenses ongoing that our regular salary can't afford. Right? A big down payment on a house. Well, a bigger house comes with bigger note, bigger insurance costs, bigger maintenance costs, and so on and so forth.
Right. And those are often the pieces that we don't take into account.
Or here's a great example of lifestyle creep. One of our favorite movies during Christmas time is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Right? What does Clark do? He buys a pool before he gets his bonus. Right? We spend money in anticipation of making more, and sometimes it doesn't happen. And that has the potential to really destroy wealth and create those obstacles to wealth. In The Millionaire Next Door, one of my favorite books, Thomas Stanley wrote the original version, and then he started writing with his daughter the next Millionaire Next Door back in 2017. His daughter, Sarah Falau, she's actually been on the show a couple times. They show that most high earners, right? So think of high income people, professionals, sometimes business owners, they tend to not accumulate as much wealth because their spending rises faster than their income. Mm-hmm. I've seen this time and time again where people made a lot of money during their life and they get to retirement and they don't have much to show for the money they made because they spent a lot during their lifetime. So it's interesting that just because you have high income doesn't mean you're building wealth. We've talked about that time and time and time again. And I think this was your Lagniappe myth, right? In myths to building wealth. What was it? High income doesn't equate to building wealth.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Income creates opportunity.
Erik, for those listeners that are sitting here and they're thinking this through and they're listening to us talk about lifestyle creep, some of them may be spending more, not because they choose to, but because they have to, right? Prices are going up across the board. Everything that's out there. We purchase a new car, the prices have gone up. significantly. Gas is up. The cost of housing is up. And so now they're sitting there thinking to themselves, I don't have any margin, but I'm not, there really isn't lifestyle creep. What do I do?
Yeah. In some cases, they may have decreased their lifestyle and it's still costing more. Yeah. I mean, that's hard. I mean, that is a reality. I had a conversation with a client recently, and that was the conversation. Hey, things are really expensive. We can't save as much as we want to. And my response was, well, this is the season of life you're in. Maybe you don't save as much as you can. Maybe income will change at some point in the future. Maybe prices will come down at some point in the future. Something will change in your life to where you have more discretionary income. But yeah, there's a reality of I make X and life costs Y.
Right.
And I'm not increasing my lifestyle, just Y is getting more expensive. And that's why I think having margin in your finances is so important. That, I'm living below my means today. If things get expensive, eventually that's going to catch up. But if you're living below your means, saving, you can kind of get through some of those challenging times, right? And that's a behavior,
right?
Right. The behavior that destroys wealth is you don't live below your means, right? So yeah, that's a good question. That's just the reality. And I think I would say this to our clients who have young kids, especially. You're in a season of life where things are just expensive. Xavier, you and I talk about this all the time. Kids are expensive, life's expensive, and our industry puts out a lot of stats that say, hey, by this age, you should have X amount saved. And I think it creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of sense of like, oh, I'm so behind, I can't catch up. Where we should be saying, hey, look, man, like in your 20s and your 30s, you're raising kids. You might not be able to save as much as you want. That's not an excuse to spend. It's just normalize the reality that, like, man, when you need money, when you're younger, when things are more expensive, it's just not as much in abundance.
And I think you said something important there. Because of the season that you're in and expenses are more, reevaluate how much you're saving. You don't need to save as much today as you were yesterday, because you can always come back and reevaluate it at a different time when the season is over and begin increasing those savings at a later date. So I think that's an important takeaway is you don't have to save as much today as you did yesterday.
Yeah. All right, number three bad behavior: overconfidence and unnecessary risk. Here's what Thaler found. He found that people consistently, not just every now and then, they consistently overestimate their ability to make good decisions, and good financial decisions at that. Most people think that they're better investors than they really are. They think that they're better at timing the market, making the right decisions at the right time than they really are. They think that they're better at spotting opportunities than they really are. And that's where a lot of unnecessary risk comes from, this idea of overconfidence that leads me, and we're all guilty, right? Take bigger bets than we should, to be more concentrated, right? Put more chips on the table. Yeah. Maybe our overconfidence leads us to ignore the potential downside of decisions. Okay, so you're going to put all your retirement money in this highly speculative asset class because you feel that you're right. Let's talk about the downside. What if you're not right? Maybe we should moderate that bet a little bit, right? Bad behavior, overconfidence. I think I'm better at making decisions than I really am.
And that's one we hear all the time.
Yeah. We assume that we're right. So here's what's interesting. Most fortunes, this makes me think of a conversation that I had with someone once. Most fortunes aren't necessarily, you think about this, most wealth, when people have wealth, it's not necessarily destroyed slowly or lost slowly. Sometimes it happens quickly. And again, that's part of that overconfidence. So we have to be really conscious and aware of what areas do we think that we're good at that, we're really not as good at it. This is what's interesting. going to say this here real quick. Vanguard came out with a study, and I've talked about this regularly, and it's not just Vanguard. Other investment firms have come out with this. And, Vanguard, the company that is low expenses, right? Vanguard, Jim Bogle basically said that investment advisors are a waste of money, and all they do is cut into your investment returns. You don't need financial advisors to manage your assets. He's not totally wrong, but he ignores one thing. And it's that one thing that Richard Thaler said, that humans do not act rationally. Vanguard later came out with a study that said a financial advisor can add up to 3% return per year to the average investor's portfolio. So they go from saying that advisors do nothing but cost you investment returns to an advisor can add up to 3% per year. Half of that 3%. You know what it was?
Behavior.
1.5%.
Behavior.
accounted 100% to investor behavior. I mean, and that validates what Richard Thaler was talking about. So when we think about, bad behaviors, it's not just that we think we're better than we are. It's not just that we feel losses more intensely than we do gains, but we also tend to prioritize today, right? How I feel today versus what's good for me in the long term. And this goes to lifestyle creep. I want to spend now. I'll save later. And I can be more disciplined tomorrow. Spending feels good today. I want to spend today. I want to buy stuff today. Saving is too much of a sacrifice. So we neglect our older self for our younger self, in essence. And in the same way, you've heard this before, good habits stack over time. In the same way, this bad behavior stacks in the opposite direction. That bad behavior after bad behavior after bad behavior after bad decision after bad decision, it starts to compound negatively in the opposite way.
So we need to begin reevaluating our bad behaviors that we have, right? And start implementing some, or change the way that we think. And that's going to allow us to overcome those hurdles and not destroy our wealth building opportunity.
This is the very premise of the question we ask. Hey, Xavier, if you knew 20 years ago what you know today, every response is about, hey, I was doing bad things. When I say bad, like I was exhibiting bad behavior. I wasn't saving. I wasn't investing. I spent too much. Every single response when we ask that question is tied directly to doing something that I didn't do that I wish I would have understood better. And that's what we're trying to get people to understand.
Right. And our children are learning from us. So when we're making those behaviors, when we're making those bad behaviors, our children are looking at that. And as they look at it, they learn that. Do you remember the first podcast that we did 2 years ago? The question that you asked was, what is the worst decision that anyone ever gave you?
Worst advice.
Worst advice. And my response to that was, a sales manager told me to go out and buy a BMW.
Yeah.
To get into debt, because if I get into debt, it's going to make me work harder and I'm going to make more money.
Yeah.
That is a bad behavior that is taught, at least in the sales world.
Yeah.
But when our children see things like this, they begin to pick it up, and they carry those behaviors on into their careers, into their life.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with a former neighbor, and he's doing well financially. And in our conversation, he's like, Eric, I've built 4 fortunes over my lifetime, and I lost 3 of them, right? And he's kind of on his 4th, and I don't know if he's got a fortune, but he's doing all right. And, we had a little conversation about that, and I asked him this question. I said, I'm curious if you stopped, because what he was doing, he was trying to win big, trying to make more. overconfident in his decisions. Looking back, that's, through this lens, that's what was happening. And I asked him, I said, if you stop trying to win big, if you stop trying to have to chase the same return that you earned when you first started investing, would you be better off today if you didn't go through this iteration of losing all these fortunes? And he stopped and he paused and he's like, yeah, I'd be much further along. So his overconfidence in his ability to continue to grow and grow and grow was misplaced. He was misbehaving in Richard Thaler's vernacular. So
you don't need to win fast. You just can't lose big then.
Yeah. Minimize the damage sometimes. So, behavioral finance, I think Richard Thaler's work would tell us this is a takeaway. It doesn't necessarily tell us how markets behave, how investments behave, but what his research tells us, and it gives us insight into how people behave in markets. And that is what's so valuable. And that's quite frankly the core of how we are building our practice, is recognizing that people come to us because they want to have financial success, whatever that looks like to them. Okay. We recognize that the best way for us to help you be successful is to understand how you think about money. Right? It's not just how to make money, how to grow money, but it's how to actually protect money. All right, so we talked about these three obstacles, these wealth killers, behaviors that are wealth killers. We're going to move into, over the next few episodes, we're going to talk about the ingredients to building wealth. And the first one that we're going to talk about is the opposite side of this coin, and it's going to talk about some positive behaviors to build wealth. So in the next 3 episodes, what we're going to talk about are the actual ingredients to building wealth. We talked about these obstacles to building wealth, behaviors that are wealth killers or wealth destroyers. So hope you lean into these next 3 episodes. The first one is going to be the opposite side of this coin, and we're going to talk about behaviors, good behaviors to building wealth. So if you find this helpful, if you find this informative, please share it, spread the word. We appreciate you. Plan wisely, live confidently.